So, something huge has just happened to Russia's war economy, and it's maybe the single biggest blow to Putin since his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Or could it be multiple things? Indeed, for the first time, China's state oil giants have suspended purchases of Russian crude. Not because of market forces, not because of demand, but because of the other major shift: Donald Trump's largest sweeping sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies. So what looks like just another diplomatic tit for tat is actually far bigger. A calculated strike at the heart of Putin's wartime economy, and this time, well, they already are having an impact. So in this video, I wanted to explore what this shift really means for the global oil map and Putin's war economy. Why it matters far more than we may realise, because this isn't just about barrels or balance sheets, but on one of Russia's biggest economic safety nets. And therefore what happens next, and why the consequences could hit Russia far harder than anyone expects, as the collapse of Moscow's leverage, influence and global strategy are all under threat.
This is the Global Gambit.
How you going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, where this time we are returning to Russia's economy, sanctions, and the geoeconomics of the Ukraine war. This time in late October, something unthinkable has now developed. But before revealing what that is, and why I consider it to be a big deal, I want to hear what you have to say about it. Do you think these sets of sanctions can take on Putin's war economy and bring it down properly? Or will they just push Moscow even further to the arms of Beijing? And if you appreciate simple, straightforward breakdowns of current events, then consider subscribing for more like this. Still, there is a hint in the word Beijing, because China's state-owned oil companies, PetroChina, Sinopec, Sino-OC, and Zhenhua Oil, have suddenly paused all imports of Russian crude, specifically seaborne. Now, this isn't just a minor trade adjustment. It is a direct reaction to the sweeping new set of US sanctions targeting Russia's energy giants, Rosneft and Lukoil, along with the vast network of intermediaries targeting Russia's shadow fleet, something that I've covered in a previous video. Now, for nearly 3 years, Moscow has relied on a sanctions loophole, which effectively is rerouting oil through friendly or neutral partners, often masked behind complex shipping networks. Now, under the Biden administration, Washington largely tolerated this arrangement as long as the global energy market remained stable, and not to antagonize China especially. But with Trump, that patience has snapped, these new measures striking at the heart of Putin's systems. They make it clear that any company or any bank dealing with Russian energy firms risks being cut off from the global dollar system, a financial death sentence for any international trader or refinery. So this marks a major geopolitical shift. For the first time since Putin's full-scale invasion, Washington's economic firepower is forcing even Moscow's most important partners to rethink their role in sustaining the Kremlin's war machine. And keep in mind that China doesn't want to rock the boat. It's not as much of a pariah state as Russia or North Korea. It relies heavily still on trade with the United States. So Trump's new measures are designed to choke off cash flows. They target the intermediaries, the shadow fleets, and various Chinese entities that have been quietly helping Moscow move oil under the radar, that non-lethal aid, if you like, from China. Now, Chinese state firms don't want to take a chance, some people have already said, and under the new rules, any participating financial institution will face these secondary sanctions, freezing assets or blocking access to US markets. Even the mighty reliance industries in India, more on that in a moment, which is the world's largest refinery complex, said it would, quote, recalibrate its Russian imports. Translation: we are not risking our American financing for Putin's discounts. Oil prices have jumped more than 5% since the announcement. That's how quickly the market realised this isn't just symbolic, it was structural. And sure, there may be a bit of a climb down from those prices, but it shows you that people are still, well, shaken up by this development. And make no mistake, this isn't about just punishing Moscow. It is about sending a message to Beijing, Delhi, and every other capital that thinks it can get around Washington's reach, or just, well, Trump's impatience now, increasingly with Putin. Now let's talk numbers specifically. For months, Moscow managed to evade sanctions by leaning heavily on various countries, but two in particular, China and India. Now, these two nations have become effectively economic lifelines, keeping Russia's war machine afloat. China has imported more than 2 million barrels a day by sea and pipeline combined, while India, led by refineries like Reliance, have become the world's largest buyers of seaborne Russian crude. Together, they account for roughly 80% of Russia's crude exports. But that model is now collapsing. Since the new sanctions took effect, both Beijing and New Delhi have already announced cutbacks. India's refineries are quietly reducing purchases. Reliance, which recently signed a 10-year deal to buy 500 million barrels a day from Rosneft, is now facing compliance headaches and the risk of losing access to US dollars. Conversely, China's state oil firms have paused seaborne imports altogether, well, at least for the short term, which could be, well, a long short term, if you know what I mean. There is no time horizon. For Beijing, which depends heavily on US-linked capital markets and foreign currency access, the calculus is simple. Stay neutral and avoid being blacklisted. Even Beijing's foreign ministry, usually quick to criticize US actions, has stayed unusually quiet. And here's the irony. For years, Trump was accused of being, quote, soft on Russia. But interestingly, now that he seems to have not gotten away with what he wants, he's now tightening the noose around Putin's most vital export, which is why some people do believe that this is a bit of a significant shift. But do you think that this is actually going to make a difference? Do let me know. This is, again, an illustration of economic warfare, not simply diplomacy. It's the use of sanctions and toolcraft in the economic toolkit to, well, take the fight more to the Kremlin. Simultaneously, things are getting ugly internally for Moscow as well. Oil and gas make up a quarter of Russia's federal budget. And if China and India slash those imports, even temporarily, for say 1/4, so to the end of the year, it's not just lost revenue, it's a structural collapse in confidence. Already independent refiners, the so-called teapots in China, are hesitating to pick up the slack. These are small, agile, but, well, terrified groups that are afraid of being blacklisted in the US. For Putin, therefore, that's catastrophic, because while the Kremlin boasts about resilience, the truth is the economy's been on life support. And this is confirmed by the Russian central bank. Just on Friday, it cut the key interest rate to 16.5%, the fourth consecutive cut since June. It's a desperate attempt to keep the economy breathing amid slowing growth, high inflation, and collapsing exports. Others putting it bluntly, the central bank is essentially stating that next year, Russia will largely be in severe economic stagnation, something we see often if you make these minor shifts to the interest to try to influence the money supply. And therefore, inflation will not be reached in terms of its targets until 2027. But who knows what will happen by then? All the while, businesses are drowning under borrowing costs. The stock market is sliding, and confidence, the one thing the Kremlin can't sanction its way out of, is evaporating. And so this brings us to the global implications, because the twist is, what hurts Moscow rattles the world. As India and China scramble to replace Russian barrels, global prices inevitably rise. I've commented on how the domestic Russian situation is impacting OPEC and overall, well, oil demand and supply. Now, it's quietly being admitted that there is no official agreement yet within OPEC, but it will have implications. And so for Europe, also, it's another winter of uncertainty. For the global south, it means more expensive fuel imports. And for America, it's a reminder that even economic warfare will have collateral damage. This is the risk of, well, potentially using secondary sanctions. But the bigger question is now, what does this do to Russia and its global standing? Because without reliable buyers in Asia, Moscow's leverage over the world's energy markets begins to vanish. It no longer commands the same fear or influence it once did, even among so-called friendly or, well, allied states. A shrinking pool of customers therefore means fewer diplomatic favours to call in, less bargaining power at summits, and a weakened image of economic resilience, no matter what Putin likes to claim. Inside Russia, this could prove even more explosive. A contraction in oil revenues will bleed into social spending, regional budgets, and the Kremlin's ability to keep key elites on side. The myth of Putin's invincibility is, well, non existent now. But it also does still rest on, well, wages being able to grow, inflation being stable, and the ruble not being continually weakened, which all is happening. And so we're seeing hints of the public frustration in polling, local protests over falling living standards. And if that perception spreads, then Putin's foreign adventures are now directly undermining Russia's livelihoods, his political grip slowly eroding, and his inability to, well, gain broader support from abroad, let alone at home, all compounds. Trump's team believes the pressure will drive Putin to the negotiating table. However, I find that unlikely. Russia's economy is in bad way, but even now, maybe Putin will be able to find a way to wiggle out of this predicament. Although I do feel this is particularly bad for him. Because make no mistake, if Beijing permanently scales back, Putin loses his last and biggest reliable partner. And when Russia can't sell its oil, it can't fund its war. So with that, are we seeing a forced calibration across the world's biggest energy consumers that will hit Putin the most? And what does this mean for China, New Delhi, India, and the relationship to Russia in the economic context? If this continues, we may look back on October 2025 as the month that really did fundamentally undermine and be the biggest crack to Russia's war economy. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this, then do consider subscribing and giving the video a like. If you don't know me, my name is Pyotr Kurzin. I'm a mix of Russian and English with a background in economics, international relations, and strategic studies, hosting the Global Gambit here with a mixture of economists, diplomats, analysts, and academics to understand the real world and put it into, well, easier to understand given the complexity and the rapidity that things are occurring. But we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.